channel. Let's listen
carefully. Over the years, our leadership positions have overlapped, and even before then, we were working together on appropriation bills back in the early days. I'm pretty sure she didn't want to do this. But the fact that she was pulled into this direction against what appeared to be her political instincts a year ago underscores that this was a purely political exercise. Now, having been dragged into something she instinctively felt was a mistake, then the second impulse was, let's get this over with as quickly as possible. Get it out of here, get it over in the other body, and let them deal with it. So that's why you had an abbreviated, truncated rush job over in the House. But even during that abbreviated period, it was pretty clear that they amassed a significant body of evidence from witnesses, which you heard them argue about over here frequently. They provided with us in the House record testimony from 13 witnesses, depositions from 17 witnesses. Then, of course, we added on top of that 180 questions. That we witnessed 193 witness video clips and 28,000 pages of evidence. So I asked my staff to count up the number of times we heard from the House managers during their presentation, how many times it was already proven. There were 60 times, 60, in which House managers said during their presentation to us that the case was either proven or proved, 60 times. There were 33 more times when one or more of the House managers said the evidence was overwhelming. So where did the nonsense about witnesses come from? I have a pretty good idea. After this thoroughly political exercise left the House and came over to the Senate, there was a lot of poll data taken. How are we going to sell this to senators? How are we going to sell it to the American people? Even though we already have all of this testimony and all of these witnesses, what polls well? Why, of course, if you ask the average citizen whether they think there ought to be witnesses in a trial, well, you're going to get an answer that you want. So the Speaker, I gathered, decided to sit on the impeachment papers after arguing that this is a matter of great urgency and the president needed to be removed from office as soon as possible. Sit on them for a month to laughably think that that somehow gave me leverage to concede their principal political argument, which was this was all about witnesses over here on our side. Well, that brought one of those rare smiles to my face, which you witnessed, in which I was perplexed by the strategy that was being employed. Finally, when it became obvious to everyone, it was an absurd position. Democratic senators were saying, why don't you send the papers over? Some of our own members were saying it before they got slapped back into line. The papers came over, and we knew full well this was all going to be about witnesses. I had said to my colleagues back in December, in anticipation of the impeachment, that their strategy would be to get it out of the House quickly and to leave it in the Senate endlessly, so that we'd have that wrapped around our axle indefinitely. And my suspicion was that it wasn't so much about President Trump, but rather about taking the Senate. And my counterpart, Senator Schumer, finally in the last few weeks pretty much admitted it to all of you that that's what this was all about. It was about taking the Senate and about trying to bog us down in this and to try to get my guys to have a lot of tough votes. So I'm proud of my colleagues for seeing through that, for knowing that even though if you ask a typical voter, should there be witnesses in a trial, they'd say, sure, of course there ought to be witnesses. That it was really about not the president. We all knew he was not going to be removed from office, but about trying to take the Senate. And so I'm proud of my members for resisting the temptation to go down that path, for also preventing what the second strategy was. It was pretty clear the Democrats, if they couldn't win this, wanted to embarrass the Chief Justice, try to drag him into this maelstrom. And the way that could have been done, obviously, was with a 50-50 vote where he would have been accused had he chosen not to rule, which, of course, I can't imagine he would have, but it's pretty clear that would have dragged the Supreme Court right into the middle of the maelstrom as well. So we've reached the conclusion. I think this was a thoroughly political exercise from the beginning to the end. And the final irony of it all is the Speaker was right in the beginning. Because here we are today in a position to judge the political impact of this. Since it all started about politics, how did it end about politics? The president has his highest approval rating since he's been in office. I can tell you, as a poll watcher who's looking at polls in certain Senate races, every one of our people in tough races, every one of them, is in better shape today than they were before the impeachment trial started. So I'm not sitting here predicting what will be the biggest issue in November, but I can tell you this. Right now, this is a political loser for them. They initiated it. They thought this was a great idea. And at least for the short term, it has been a colossal political mistake.
Several of your members have been critical of the president's conduct, saying it was inappropriate, shameful, as Lisa McConnell said. One of them, of course, today said he would vote to convict the president on abuse of power, Mitt Romney did. And for you, why is it okay for the president to ask another foreign country to investigate a political rival?
Now, Manu, I've been responding to you for years. And you know that what I'm here to talk about today is the political impact of this. We've completed it. We've listened to their arguments. We've voted. It's in the rearview mirror. And I think what's appropriate now is to weigh, since it all began for political reasons, the political impact of it. And I think it's pretty clear what I've already said is where we are right now. Yeah.
Is there room in the Republican Party for someone who votes for the president's conviction?
Well, I was surprised and disappointed, but I still think that we had a great teamwork on this, and I think we're in a good position going into our Senate races and the presidential race. With regard to this issue, there may be plenty of other issues between now and November, but I think we're in pretty good shape right now. Yeah.
Speaker McConnell, some of Speaker Pelosi's top lieutenants are already talking about next steps, subpoenaing John Bolton. Is there a serious political price to pay if they don't move on after impeachment?
Well, you know, I've watched these impeachments these investigations over the years by both sides. I really think the American people are more likely to focus at this point and for the rest of the year on what kind of shape is the country in. How are you feeling about things? Are you better off, as President Reagan put it, are you better off now than you were 4 years ago? Yeah, I think the investigations will go on. That's sort of what Congress does. We've done it when we were in the majority and there was a Democratic president. They've done it. I wouldn't expect that to stop. I think in the end, it's not likely to have much of an impact on any of the races, the presidential or the Senate races. Yeah.
Donald Trump Jr., just to follow up on Garrett's question there, is calling for Mitt Romney to be expelled from the Republican conference. Is there any chance that Mitt Romney is expelled from the Republican conference as a result of his vote to convict?
Yeah, look, I was surprised and disappointed, but we have much work to do for the American people. And I think Senator Romney has been largely supportive of most everything we've tried to accomplish. Yeah.
Why is there this reluctance to engage specifically?
All right, Ms. McConnell, wrapping